generations of Robinson here, and most of us don't have a clue how we are related. So we're going to see if we can understand that a little better so that you know who is who and so on. Now, I'm going to start with Colonel John Robertson. Colonel John Robertson is a common ancestor that we all share. The land that we are standing on was given to him by Queen Victoria of England in the early part of the 18th century. I think 1820s, I think he got this land. Colonel John Robertson was a white man. He came from Scotland and he was a colonel in the British Army. And it was Colonel John Robertson that was instrumental in capturing and exporting all of the Maroons of Trelawney to Canada. Now some family members know this history and are ashamed of this history, but history is history.
That's right.
So he is our ancestor. He's a Scottish man, and he was given 5,000 acres of land in northern Clarendon. This is the center of that 5,000 acres. And it was given to him. All the land that you see around you is Robinson land, or was Robinson land. Everything that you see around you, 5,000 acres. Cousin of ours, not here today, has the actual deed written and signed by Queen Victoria of England. Alright, so you have a claim.
Amen.
Right? They capture your land. Now, one of the things I've not been able to figure out was why the family name went from Robertson to Robinson. There's two schools of thought. The first one is that in the old days, the postmistress would do the birth certificates, and not all postmistresses were good spellers. And that on the birth of the colonel's son, that was Edward Robinson, it was spelled Robinson instead of Robertson. That's the first school of thought. The second school of thought was more scandalous, that Colonel Robertson had a family in Scotland. And so, as not to get himself into trouble, he deliberately named his son Robinson. We know how that goes, right? So, that's the school of thought. Now, Edward Robinson, the colonel's son, had 9 children with Joanna Bethune. Joanna Bethune was a Maroon whose ancestry is of interest to all of us. I'm not going to go into the detail, but essentially she told my father that her ancestors were Moors. Those of you who study world history would know that the Moors were the ones who navigated the Spanish to the New World. The Moors knew about the New World, and they were the navigators for the Spanish, Columbus and them, to the New World. So she told my father that the Moors were her ancestors, and not necessarily the slaves who came from Africa. The Moors lived in Spain. Okay? She also told him that the line of Moors that she is from the line of the Phoenicians. Now the Phoenicians were now going back 2,000 years before Christ. That means she knew her history. But by telling my father that we're from the line of the Phoenicians, I was able to realize that there were 2 major groups of Moors. The line of Phoenicians, 2,000 years before Christ, and the more recent Moors, who were 700 years after Christ, who were Muslims. So we are not related to the Moors who were Muslims. We were related to the Moors who were from what is now Lebanon, Israel, and North Africa. Those Moors were Hebrews. So we're related to them. But I'm not going into that detail. I have all of the details here. So Joanna's history is even more significant than the Colonel's history. Because it tells you who you are.
That's right, from way back.
Now, Joanna and Edward had 9 children. Do we know them?
Yes.
I know all. I'm talking to those under the age of 50.
Okay.
The 9 children were, and if you hear your ancestor's name, you must shout it out. Is anybody here from James? Any of James' descendants here? James? Yes, one. That's one. One from James.
Sissy, all the Sissy from James. All the Sissy from James. Yes,
Alright, is anybody here from Johnny?
No.
Anybody from Johnny?
No.
Rudy.
Sissy's from James. We're talking about who?
Is anybody here from Neville? Lots of Neville.
I was born with Joanna.
Neville is the bad man.
No, he wasn't the only one.
Is anybody here from Percy? Clearly Percy was the bad man.
Nobody from Willie. Nobody from Willie.
Is anybody here from Ina?
No. They're all in Ochoa right now.
All in Ochoa. Anybody from Videta?
Who? And Vilita.
One from Videta. Anybody from Willie?
No.
Nobody from Willie here. Now we know that Alki had no children. There's nobody here from Alki.
Not true.
The oldest of the 9 children was Rudolph. Anybody here from Rudolph? From Rudolph here. Rudolph was my grandfather. Now, all of the families are big, and that is why I'm not going beyond those common ancestors. Because, for example, Rudolph had 12 children, and he wasn't the bad one. I don't even know how many Percy and Neville had.
Let's leave that one alone.
We're going to leave that alone. So we are from a huge family, and as I said, there are 4 generations of Robertson here. You all know where you fit in on that table. So once you know which of those ancestors you're from, when somebody asks you who you're from, don't say your father. I won't tell you Ben, I'm going to tell you I'm from Rudolph. So that you know which of those 9. Everything will be related to those 9. So we're all from Edward and Joanna. We're all from those 2, and we're from one of the 9. Alright? Now, the Rudolph, the oldest, lived right around the corner. And when we finish, we're going to take a walk, and we're going to look at the graves of, Rudolph is there, most of his family, his children are there, his wife is there. But we're going to look at the graves of our common ancestors. That is the grave of Edward. Thank you. The grave of Edward and the grave of Joanna. If you're on the internet, you would have seen a picture of Joanna. Now, all of these ancestors lived long. The Colonel, it is said, lived into his 90s. We know that Edward lived into his 90s. We know that Joanna died at 96. So all of these have lived very, very long. I don't know how to my father, he died at 57. But sorry, very young, yes. But in all of us, there is longevity. So we have to stop smoking, stop drinking, stop womanizing, you know. Right? Start behaving ourselves. We need to, some of the things that I learned that they did, for example, they did not eat after sunset. when the sun set, they would not eat until sunrise. And it is these little things that medical science is now showing is the key to longevity, because your body gets a chance to fast. And you need to fast every single day. They slept 8 hours a night.
But they smoked. I can tell you that. I'm not going to hide it. Don't you?
They smoke for medicinal purpose.
No. They smoke tobacco.
Just like all the young guys will tell you they smoke for recreation.
No.
I'm not going to go into more history than that. I think that's enough common history. And when we're ready, let's take a walk and take a look at those ancestors. That's right. Any questions?
Yeah, but you didn't call the last uncle, which is Uncle Neville, who had the most charade.
He did.
Neville. Neville Percy has the most children.
Uncle Percy has more children than Uncle Neville? Oh, Lord.
Yeah, Percy of the most here.
One of the things, now that we're all on the computer, it is essential that we keep in touch with each other. I live in Montego Bay, and if you are in Montego Bay and you have distress, I should be able to help you. If I go to Kingston and I have a problem, then somebody should be able to help me. Even though we're second and third and fourth generation cousins, we must try and know each other. We are only a few of hundreds. There's a group of us there are 2 groups in England. There are several groups in Canada. The ones in Canada had their own reunion, Robinson Edward reunion. There was a few set of Robinsons at that reunion, right? With the whole heap of Robinsons, you all have relatives who live in the States, right? So there are hundreds and hundreds of us, and we need to know each other.
That's right.
My telephone number never changed. I've had the same number for about 35 years.
That's not good to say. Alright, so when we're ready, we can take a walk and take a look at the graves of our common ancestors. Thank you.
Yeah.